Today's episode is sponsored by Sandals Resorts. What's up, Chillas? Today we're with Jamie Coast, the brilliant artist and founder of Cotton and Bow. We're going to get all into the nitty-gritty of everything you need to know about stationery and invitations. Jamie, welcome back to Chilla.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here.
You know, you are one of my all-time favorite guests. I just have such a great time talking to you, and you always just know how to give us the information that we need, whether it be the fun details like watercolors that we can add to our invites, or the kind of unsexy stuff like we're going to start diving into here in a second when it comes to, hey, the post office can be awesome and it can suck. So here's what you need to know.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you. I'm so happy to be here again.
So let's get into it, because I know a lot of people are talking about this right now because stamps are changing, the post office is changing how they're doing things, we got tariffs going on. So what do we need to know first and foremost for our save the dates and invites when it comes to postage and the post office?
Yes. So I'm sure everyone saw recently that the post office announced a big change in how they were postmarking mail. And it sounds really scary, but a lot of the good news is that a lot of this was stuff that they were doing already behind the scenes. But they kind of just more formalized the announcement and kind of formalized that it was happening, which is, good for a lot of us, who are shipping packages every day, because what was happening was you would drop off a package or a letter at the post office, and then, it would go on its merry way, but the tracking wouldn't update. And so, people would get very concerned that their packages weren't on their way to them. And then all of a sudden they'd get an update. Oh, your package is delivered. And so that has been happening for, the past year or so. Not on every package, but, on a small percentage of packages, we would sometimes see, because, part of our business is, we ship out a lot of table numbers, place cards, and ready to ship items, things that are already pre-designed. And so we're shipping, hundreds of packages every week. And so, we do get a lot of couples, asking us kind of, where's my package? Where is it? It says it hasn't shipped yet. Like, is it still sitting in your studio? And we're like, no, don't worry. Like, we've definitely shipped it. The post office just sometimes doesn't scan it in. And so what they basically announced is that they're officially now not always postmarking your mail. And so where this really comes in is kind of more important when it comes to things like bills or filing your taxes, where you need that postmark date to be accurate. For your wedding invitations, if you were hoping to have a certain date, stamped on your invitations, you can still go to the counter and ask them to postmark it, and they will postmark it for you.
That's a good tip.
Most of the clerks at the counter will still do that for you the same day. You just have to ask. Otherwise, they might not postmark it accurately. It might just get postmarked, a day or two later as it's on its way when it gets to the next post office or the next post office hub. But typically that's not usually an important thing for couples. They don't necessarily care where it's postmarked. Sometimes they do. I did have a bride a couple of years ago who was getting married in Key West. And instead of mailing the invitations for her, she really wanted me to pack them up and mail them to her so that she could have the Key West postmark on all of her invitations, so that it was clear that the postmarks were, coming from Key West instead of, my random town in Westchester. That like detail was very important. So if that sort of thing, like that sort of detail of, having it postmarked from a specific location on a specific date is important to you, you can still ask the post office to do it, but they just don't do it automatically anymore. And you definitely want to do it for things like your taxes or bills that need to be paid on time. You want to make sure that they're postmarking it with the date that you dropped it off, because, taxes are coming up, for example, April 15th. If you drop it off at your post office April 14th and you get it postmarked, you're technically not late, even if it doesn't arrive.
Because it is postmarked.
At its destination, because it's postmarked on the correct date. So that's a scenario where it's way more important to have the correct date postmarked.
Anything for our procrastinators out there, which I know I can procrastinate sometimes. It just depends on what it's about. But, you have RSVPs coming out, right? And maybe you decide to wait till the last minute to send those out, and they need to come back within like a week or two so you can let catering know. What are some tips and advice to kind of let people know, especially those that like to kind of wait till the last minute, on how to handle things like this?
I mean, the biggest thing to get things out fast, if you need to get invitations out fast and you need to get responses back fast, is to not use stamps, but to upgrade to ground packaging. It does cost more, But if you put a ground label on your envelopes, it gets there much faster and you get tracking with it. So you can actually make sure that they arrive at their destination. And the vast majority of them will update as they go along accurately. And then all of them will say, when they've been delivered. So that way you can see, if any of them, get misdelivered or are on the way back to you, return to sender, because you have a wrong zip code or something like that, you'll know right away. So that's a big thing that can save you weeks of time. Because if you send them with regular stamps, even though typically it takes, 2 to 5 days to get to the destination, it might actually take 3 weeks. So if you're really under the gun in terms of timing, you definitely want to upgrade to that ground tracking. And then for RSVPs, I would definitely do an online RSVP in that case. Where you ask your guests to go onto your website and RSVP directly there. And you can include a QR code to make it easy for them instead of having to wait for the post office to mail them back to you.
Love a QR code. But here's another tip that you just brought up. We've brought up on here 1,000 times about how there's always some kind of little added fee or cost that you're not factoring in. I've said at nauseum when I got married back in the day, I hadn't factored in stamps for save the dates and invites, and that adds up, right? At that time, it was like $80, $90 altogether, or maybe just for invites, I can't remember, but it goes up every year, right? And so those are things to consider, to keep in mind. And with that, too, since there's so many changes right now with the post office, as well as with tariffs, with shipping, what are things that we need to consider with that? And has it changed the traditional, I say loosely, timeline on when to start creating your save the dates and invites and sending them out?
The biggest cost factor when it comes to postage specifically is just inflation. So the post office plans out for the entire year, how many times they're going to increase the stamp price, and it's usually based on the prior year inflation. So what you've seen lately is that there have been a lot of stamp increases because we did have a year or two around the pandemic where there was a huge spike in inflation. And so they had to do a lot of catch up. So they did increase it quite a bit. And that's because stamps are really just legal tender for the post office. It's their way of charging you for that service of delivering the mail. And so the stamp cost, like to make the stamps, hasn't necessarily gone up. It's just the cost to deliver the services and inflation. And so they like to try and keep stamps relative to the cost of inflation. So if we do see high inflation, then we will see some more stamp increases. So the sooner you buy your stamps, the more affordable they're going to be because you won't be suffering with price increases. There aren't any imminent price increases, but typically, they might do a price increase in July or they might do a price increase in January. That's usually when we see them. But I haven't seen, I think they just did a price increase, so I haven't seen what their plans are for additional pricing yet for 2026. But the current pricing of stamps for one forever stamp is about 78 cents right now.
And you brought up the last time you were on the show, maybe 2 episodes ago, but you made the point not to buy your stamps on sites like Amazon. Yes. To only go through USPS. Can you remind people that have listened before and for the newbies out there, why is it so important that you don't buy from a second or third party source?
One of the things that's so important, and it's really just not an area to look for savings, is with your postage. There are plenty of other areas that we could talk about that, you can save and, other things that are like more splurge worthy, but somewhere where you don't want to look for discounts or, on sale pricing is with your stamps. And that's just the way that stamps are purchased and sold. So typically a business can buy, if I'm selling, cups, I can buy a mug for $1 and then sell it for $3. And that's, because I'm buying so many of the mugs, I can buy them at, wholesale discounted pricing, and then I can sell them to consumers at a higher price. But that's not how stamps work at all. If I, as a business, go to the post office and I say I want to buy thousands of stamps, they charge me the same amount no matter what, and they charge me the same exact thing that they would charge you to buy one stamp. So there is no way to discount it.
No.
there's no discounting. So that's a huge red flag if you do see stamps on sale or stamps discounted. If you see stamps that are just lower than the price of what they're being sold for on the USPS website. In general, that they're counterfeit. And I would say the vast majority of stamps that I see sold on Amazon are counterfeit stamps. And what you'll find is that you'll have a lot of people saying, oh, well, I bought my stamps from here. I bought my stamps from this other website and they were fine. My invitations made it in the mail. And really, they got lucky. The counterfeit is really good because they're really just stickers. And so they're printing off stickers, in China or other countries and shipping them to the US for, very low cost. And so they look very real. Really, the only way to tell is, put them under a black light or compare them to an actual stamp. And so the post office doesn't necessarily do that for every single piece of mail, like to check that they're real.
Like your fake ID at a bar when you're underage.
Exactly. But if they do check, they, similarly to the bar, they just kick out your invitations.
Yeah.
So they just throw everything out and they don't even tell you. So if they do find that there's counterfeit postage on your invitations, they throw out the entire mailing. So to me, that's really not worth the risk, especially if you spend
such a waste of money if that happens.
Lot of money.
So much money.
So you can save, a couple bucks on stamps. You're trying to, find a better deal, and then all of a sudden everything gets thrown out and you have to start all over. So I personally advise not risking it. Especially with the more popular, there's like certain stamps that are just like very, very rare, but very, very popular with couples. And so it's one of those things that they're just counterfeited all the time. And so you're much more likely to get caught. So the white rose stamps, I'm sure you've seen them. Mm-hmm. They're classic. They're beautiful. I wish the post office would release just some more white flower stamps because that's what we all want to see as designers and couples is just white flowers. But there are white rose stamps that are, very, very popular. But because they've been so popular for so many years, there's basically no real ones left in existence. There's very few. A couple thousand still, but, just not enough that you're able to sell them on Amazon at huge volume like they currently are.
Well, if you're a stamp collector, here's a tip. Hold on to that one if you have a real one.
Yes, if you have a real one, hold on to it. You can find them. There are reputable dealers that sell them, but they're selling them for, insane prices, like $8 a stamp. And so people are seeing those and going, oh, well, I'm not paying $8 a stamp. I'm seeing them on Amazon for 50 cents. I'm going to buy these ones for 50 cents. And so that's how you can tell right away. Like those ones are clearly counterfeit. They're very popular. The real ones are being sold for $8 because they're so rare. They've basically been bought out of existence. And so, those are some to like be cautious of. If you want to splurge and buy them, maybe buy a set for some VIP guests or, your details photos that you're taking, and in that case, if you're just using them for photos and it doesn't necessarily matter where you bought them. But I wouldn't use those on your mailing because it's only a matter of time before the post office catches up to the fact that, these stamps are really rare. There's clearly no way that thousands of brides each year are using them.
That actually brings up another point. So again, we talked about here ad nauseum about how the guest is the most expensive part of a wedding. Just the invitation and save the dates alone is what on average would you say at this point for a wedding? Per person?
For the postage or for like the actual
the whole
invite
shebang.
And the envelope and everything else?
Everything.
Yeah. So on average, if you're just going to buy it like ready designed, you're going to go into like a site like Minted or Zazzle. You're going to expect to pay anywhere from $1.49 to $2.46. I did like a whole spreadsheet one time of like all the all the averages of like what you get and what it comes with and what the costs are per invitation. So that would include one invitation and one envelope and maybe addressing on the envelope. So that doesn't include any like...
It's not counting your save the date, not counting like an RSVP card and a map and anything else.
Correct. So no like extra cards, no accessories, like no letterpress, no double thick upgrades. That's just like bare bones cost. You're spending, about $1.50 to $2.50 per invitation, depending on where you buy it. Now, if you get into working with a stationery designer and you're doing something semi-custom or super custom, then you're working with a human. You're paying that person design fees
like
on
you.
Top of that cost. Yes, correct. And so I explain this to people all the time. If you're commissioning artwork, you would expect that price to be several $1,000s. And if you're working with a stationery designer to commission multiple pieces of artwork for your invitation, you can expect the cost to be similar just for that work. And so it's not the printing costs that are really driving things up there. It's really just working with a human one-on-one. In general, you're paying for their time. And so that's not something that you typically do in your life in general. You don't typically hire a driver. You don't typically hire an interior designer. You don't typically hire, a full-time nanny until you have children. And then you start to see like, oh yes, like, this starts to cost a lot of money when you hire somebody to work for you. So, I mean, that's essentially what you're doing is you're hiring someone to work for you, just like you would hire an interior designer.
Imagine a wedding day where each detail is already taken care of, allowing you to savor every moment. At Sandals, your dream wedding can finally become a reality. From intimate elopements to grand celebrations, Sandals offers customizable packages for every size and style. Plus, everything is included: your accommodations, gourmet dining, premium drinks, and all your wedding services. You get a dedicated wedding planner and an on-site team to manage everything from ceremony to reception. And here's a really sweet deal. Stay 7 nights or longer in a club or butler level room, and you'll receive their Sweetheart Wedding Package, completely on them. That means your ceremony, decor, and even a delicious 2-tier wedding cake. For those of you who really want to be sure, you can even test drive your wedding experience before you book it. Stop dreaming and start planning. Head over to sandals.com today or call 1-877-SANDALS to create your unforgettable wedding experience. I think it's important to think about the breakdown because, again, it adds to the rest of the costs of the guests, which adds to your overall budget. And going to budget, so with the rising cost of everything in the world right now, how are we looking when it comes to our invitations, the paper goods, and shipping, especially like overseas and that, because that's all adding up.
Because of tariffs and just because of the uncertainty in the world, the cost of goods has just gone up. So we're seeing that kind of across the board from all of our suppliers, whether it's a printer or the paper manufacturers, since a lot of the paper is not manufactured in the U.S., it's manufactured elsewhere and being shipped to the U.S. Even things like ribbon, which a lot of that comes from China. Or wax seals. A lot of them come from Canada and other places like that. The prices for those have increased. So we have seen an increase in pricing for that. I think what was happening in the beginning was companies, as much as they could, were just letting it eat into profit margins and trying to maintain the pricing. And then, since it's been this long now of, almost a year, like back and forth on tariffs, them going up, them going down, them going up again. Now it's starting to affect the pricing in the market because it's just untenable to sort of keep that, keep that pricing out of the final price that couples see. So you will start to see things creep up a little bit if you were looking at the prices last year or 2 years ago. And it's not huge amounts, but a piece of paper that might have cost $1 is now going to cost $1.20. And when you start to buy, 100 of them or 200 of them for your guests, like that, those costs add up.
So we talked to Adrienne Garner not too long ago, and we discussed the wedding tax and how people think if you say wedding versus any other event, it means more expensive. And for some things, it kind of does, but there's a reason for that. So from your perspective as a stationer and an artist, what is your take on the wedding tax and your advice for couples when it comes to it?
Typically, it's just because there are extra things coming with it. So if you're sending a birthday party invitation, and you want all of the same upgrades that you would want for a wedding invitation, you want hand calligraphy, or you want double thick paper, or you want it letterpressed, you want a custom design, you want watercolor, then it's going to be the same price, whether it's for a birthday or whether it's for a wedding. But what happens is that for a birthday, you're much more likely to pick something that's, more affordable and simpler and, just has less bells and whistles. But when it's for your wedding, you want to pull out all the stops and pick all the things. And so that's part of what's driving that sort of wedding tax, I'll put in quotes, is really just the services and the options that couples are picking is kind of adding their own tax onto it. Because they're picking things that they wouldn't pick necessarily for a birthday invitation.
And actually, you're saying that just for this. So not all paper is created equal. And for most people that don't work in stationery, don't work in artistry and design, they just think whatever invitation they're used to getting, they don't put much thought into the texture of it, right? Or the shape of it. But then when you start wedding planning, you get bombarded with all these options. It gets overwhelming like everything else in planning, right? So what is your, I guess, more simplified advice and take on how to decipher the different paper stock and styles and how to decide what's going to be best for you?
Yes, absolutely. So most websites or even stationers that you're working with, you can get samples from, and usually they'll give you samples for free. And so that is a really good place to start. If you're totally clueless and you have no idea what you want, just start to look at different paper types and see which ones you like. Like the feel of, like the weight of, things like that. Kind of a general overview is, a glossy stock is going to look, more cheap than a matte stock, right? So when you're looking on a website, if you have no clue, you're going to want to choose matte over glossy. A thicker paper, I think, is usually worth the upgrade no matter what kind of paper it is. So doing a double thick paper for your main invitation and then choosing single thick for the other pieces, I think adds a lot in terms of the quality and the perceived quality of it when it gets to your guests. It's always going to make it just look more luxurious and more expensive, and really be, kind of a big bang for your buck in terms of just the paper thickness. And so if you can choose sort of that thicker paper, I think that makes a huge difference. I was just working with my friend got married in November. And, we were working on her invitations and then her day of paper. And I was like, for the menus, you absolutely want to do double thick menus. It just like adds a weight. It like feels nice. And then I was like, for the programs, you don't necessarily need double thick paper. You can just do single thick programs because they're only going to be, kind of looking at them and then, tucking them away in terms of, after the ceremony. But for whatever reason, something on a plate, like you want it to feel a little bit more substantial.
Yeah.
And afterwards she was like, you were so right. Like there's just something about like a double thick menu that feels like a real menu. Like it feels like it belongs on the dinner table and it's part of the decor. And that was like a good place for me to like upgrade, but I definitely didn't need to upgrade both. Then there's like different paper types. So, regular cardstock, even cardstock with a texture, like linen or felt, which is watercolor paper, essentially. They call it felt texture. Those are usually all about the same price, even though, things with a texture tend to feel a little bit more special. People really like linen. I personally don't. I don't like the linen paper.
Is it hard to work with too? For you?
Not necessarily. It's just like it's got a slight gloss on it. Like it's got a slight coating. Yeah. And so to me, that like feels a little cheap. But there are so many people that are like, oh, I want something really special. Like, and even businesses, like I'll work with, like a hotel chain or something like that for an event. And they're like, oh, can we do something special? Can we do like linen paper? And I'm like, if you insist. So, it's personally just a me. It's obviously just a me thing. Like me personally, I don't like it, but lots of people love linen. And it doesn't cost more necessarily than regular cardstock.
Oh, interesting.
The things that do cost more are cotton cardstock. So that's one to look out for. It like is sneaky. It costs double the price of regular cardstock. So if you see cotton cardstock, it does feel really nice. It has like a little bit of a roughness, almost like fabric texture.
Like a Hanes t-shirt feel on you?
Yes, exactly. So it's very common for letterpress and embossed designs to be done on a cotton paper. So that's part of why those cost more, is because they're typically on a cotton paper. And then handmade paper is also extremely, extremely expensive. So handmade paper is 100% cotton. It's made from like cotton pulp that's then pressed into molds and creates a naturally deckled edge. So it's all handmade, kind of like one at a time by artisans. And so that paper can cost, 100 times as much as one sheet of cardstock. So, and when you're getting it printed on, it typically costs about 4 times as much as like printed cardstock. So that's one of those things that, is very polarizing. People either love handmade paper or they hate handmade paper. But if you love handmade paper, just know that it's one of the more expensive options. There is a knockoff handmade paper. that you can buy that's kind of in between. So some couples choose that. I personally don't feel like it's worth it. I think if you want the look of deckled edges, to go with the handmade paper, and you can always do, you can mix in cardstock for the other cards and just do, your invitation as your statement piece. But there is an option if you want to do kind of an in-between where you can buy regular cardstock and actually tear it with a deckled edge ruler and get a kind of a faux deckled edge. They call it a hand-torn edge or a faux decal. And so it looks similar to handmade paper, but you will notice a difference in terms of like the feel of it. It does feel, yeah, like it does feel a little bit cheaper. And it doesn't have as nice of a like fluffy edge. It has like more of that like torn edge or even like a die cut edge.
If you're a texture person, that's important. You're going to consider those details.
Yes, definitely.
When you were on the show last year, at that time, trending, you were doing a lot of watercolor, hand done, especially like, I think it was like Italy theme, because destination weddings were huge in Italy and Greece and that. A lot of that lemon and Italian feel. Where are we at now with the 26 and 27 couples? Like, what do you see trending and what do you hope to see trend?
Still very popular, watercolor. People want watercolor maps and venues. Custom crests are still somewhat popular, but I don't see as many people like insisting that they have to have a crest with their dog and their venue and their flowers and stuff in it. In terms of, kind of things that are trending, I'm definitely seeing a lot of cool die cut shapes. And those are becoming a lot more accessible to people. Minted just launched a whole line of, different die cut shapes that aren't traditionally available. So, what used to be available is you could get a circle or you could get an arch. And then, last year you started to get the wavy invitations or the scalloped invitations.
Yeah.
But that was kind of it, unless you worked with a stationer and you had them create a custom die cut for you. Then you could get things like lemons or, a cute martini glass or the shape of a state, things like that you could get if you worked with the stationer. But it was a high cost up front because you had to pay for that die to be made and then for all of them to be cut. And so now there are more options. Minted just launched a whole line of, some really cute options, especially for like your enclosure card or your RSVP card. You can do it in the shape of a martini, or you can do it in the shape of a lemon, or you can do it in the shape of a cowboy boot. They just launched like a whole line of like really fun, different shaped, funky options. And then the other thing I see trending is obviously AI. People are using a lot of AI and Canva to create their own artwork, and then they want to print it. And so, we do find that there's a little bit of a disconnect there in terms of the quality that AI is able to generate is great for web, but not great for print.
Right.
And so, the artwork that you might generate, especially if you don't know a lot about graphic design, you don't know a lot about stationery design, you might think it looks perfect and exactly how you want it, but it's not in the right dimensions or it's not in the right resolution to print. So then you go to print it and it's blurry, or you hand it to someone to print it, or you hand it to someone to use to design your stationery around. And they're like, I'm sorry, I can't use this at all because I would have to move everything around and remanipulate it. And like
the scale and dimensions are so different. Yeah.
There's no working files. I see that with envelope liners a lot. People are like, oh, I'll just use this file and I'll make it into an envelope liner. And I'm like, but it's the wrong shape. Like it's only like a square or it's, horizontal, but you actually need a vertical piece for an envelope liner, and you need to make sure that the main image is in the flap opening and not buried within the envelope. So, I'll get sent things where it's like, this is very lovely image, but the heads are getting cut off by the by the line of the envelope, or the like lovely detail that you had in the corner is like in the corner of the envelope. No one's gonna see it.
No one's gonna see it, or it's gonna get ripped.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of like, exactly. There's a lot of like intentionality that happens with design that you're not prompting the AI to do because you don't know what needs to be done, and the AI doesn't know either, and so the AI is just giving you exactly what you asked for. And so it would be the same as if you tried to paint it yourself and do it yourself. It's just faster with AI. And so it seems like a great idea. But it ends up, wasting a lot of your time and like not being super workable. I think it's great for like reference images if you want to send things along, but do be aware that some designers get really sensitive about that kind of stuff. So I've seen a huge uptake in couples using AI to write their outreach emails and their inquiry emails to designers. And so
Can you tell by the M dash, or is there other wording?
I mean, I can tell just because the inquiries don't make sense, unfortunately.
They don't read it and make it more personal before they copy and paste. That's the thing, you guys. I'm all for using AI to help with the writing process. It saves me time sometimes when working on descriptions and that, but it's just a jumping off point. You have to still feed the beast. You still have to check it and proofread it and make it your own. Like, don't just rely on it like with a prompt and then copy paste, because it's like you said, you can tell.
Yes, and I think unfortunately what's happening is the AI isn't well versed in stationery and the different print methods, and couples aren't either. Like, I'm not expecting couples to know.
That's why we're doing things like this to educate you.
Exactly. Like what paper type and what printing method and like the technical aspects of things. But then they send emails to me that are very technical, but they're totally wrong. And so they'll ask for things like, they want a Gleesy print, archival quality. And I'm like, that's for museum curated prints. Like, that's for fine art prints. Like, that's like, invitations are not printed that way. They're not Gleesy prints. Like, that's just like not a thing that we would ever do for invitations. And like archival quality, like, again, that's just like, you would only care about that for like a print that hangs in your home, like a very high quality print that you would want to make sure the sun doesn't fade it after years and years of it, hanging on your wall. So like when I see those sorts of things, I'm like, obviously like an AI wrote this, because those are just not things that exist for invitations, and the AI doesn't know and you don't know, but we know. Yeah, I'm like, I know that's not actually what you want because that thing doesn't exist. And do know that you will. So I always respond, and I'm, very nice and polite. And I know the reason why you're asking, and couples are asking AI is just because you don't know where to start. And so I think that's totally fine and totally valid. And I'm here to guide you through the process. So I'm happy to take that and advise on the call as to, what about that you actually want, and like discover what you actually want to create, and do a proposal from there. But a lot of stationery designers are really rubbed the wrong way about that. And so if they get those sorts of inquiries, they just delete them. So if you are sending emails to vendors and you find that they're just not responding, definitely take a look at your email. And it seems like it's written by AI, that's probably why, because a lot of vendors are just immediate red flag, like, I don't want to work with you if they see AI.
Or they think you're a bot.
They think you're a bot, yeah.
I've had some say they think it's just bots.
Yeah.
And they don't know, so they don't want to take a chance.
Exactly.
Jamie, what's your final piece of advice for couples today when it comes to choosing their stationery and anything else that we need to know what's going on in the space?
Yeah, I would say just have fun with it. It's the one time that you get to send something out in the mail to all of your friends and family and really make an impression. And so, if you like design, if you like paper goods, this is really an opportunity for you to do that. You won't really have additional opportunities where you'll feel like that it's worthwhile or that you're able to. You might think like, oh, I'll have a birthday party, or I'll have, a baby shower, or, you'll have these other opportunities. But when it comes down to it, you won't want to spend the time and the money to create something, truly unique and beautiful for those. You'll be kind of rushing through it, or, just picking something fast and easy. And so, this is your kind of one opportunity that you have to like create something truly beautiful and, frame it or take pictures, tuck it in a wedding album, that sort of thing. And so if you do create something, that is truly heirloom worthy, keepsake worthy, you will find that, the next generation is going to look back on that and want to take pieces of it, and kind of make it their own. I've had a number of couples who, bring me their mother's wedding invitation and say, you know, how can we pull elements from this? Because it was, you know, something that was kept and it was something that was truly beautiful. And so, you know, we might take the fact that it had a border and, you know, replicate that border on the invitations. Or, you know, if they did gold foil, like we'll do gold foil and, you know, try and preserve some of that tradition in the invitations, kind of year over year, generation over generation.
Being an 80s baby, my brain instantly went to, as a kid, like I feel like every wedding invite had the bells embossed into it, like the 2 bells. Like that was such a thing back then. Like every invitation had the bells. You knew it was a wedding. It was that or the double rings. That's all it was.
There was like every 5 invitation. Fonts. You just chose from one of the 5 fonts. They were always white. It was always navy or black, like. Font.
Yes. If it had silver lettering, it was like so expensive. Jamie, thank you so much for being back with us today. How can we get more information on you and Cotton and Bow?
Absolutely. You can follow me on Instagram at Cotton and Bow Paper, and you can find me online at cottonandbow.com. Thank you so much for having me.